Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. No time for fucking around. The constitutional crisis is here. The moment you've all been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen, the season finale to America, the constitutional crisis is here.
Wow, it really felt like they've been season finale-ing America for a while now, and they just kept renewing the show.
It's been dragging on, I'll be honest. Yeah.
It stays of our lives. It's like this is the end of this big thing, and it's like, well, we can't beat this. So next season we've got to do something else. It's been
running since 1776, and there's we just don't know how to tie it all together at this point. There's just too many open loops. It's like Lost. How do you explain the smoke monster? Don't worry about it.
The devil, Jesus, kind of, I don't know.
A demon, I don't know.
Lots of demons.
Let's unpack Lost. We've got time, right?
No, we don't. We have no time. So we had to cut a story about Elon Musk's Doge transferring 10 gigabytes of sensitive personal data out of the country to an unknown IP address. And that's just like not something which even makes the list anymore in the year of our Lord 2025. That's just like the sort of story that would be like a Watergate-style 2-year-long congressional investigation is like barely a headline because the US government is currently in the state of constitutional crisis. So you could tell that because The Atlantic wrote an article called "The Constitutional Crisis is Here," which does not fuck around. This title fucks. And basically the thrust of the article is that given that the Supreme Court has given that the Trump administration has neglected to comply with the Supreme Court's order to return one Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States, from which he was incorrectly rendered, was admitted by an ICE official that it was done in error. That ICE official has subsequently been shot out of a cannon and is no longer working for ICE.
Has conveniently disappeared.
Conveniently been disappeared perhaps to an El Salvadorian mega prison. So the administration admitted that they were not supposed to rendition Abrego Garcia under these circumstances. It was specifically a federal court order saying he was specifically not to be taken back to El Salvador. They're saying that he's a terrorist, that he's a gang member. They renditioned him anyway, and he's currently sitting in an El Salvadorian gulag.
Who is Kilmar?
He's just a fucking guy. He's just a fucking guy. That's the thing. Yeah. He's just a guy.
Why is he the lightning rod that's sort of...
Because he was unlucky. Because there was some report from a confidential CI in 2019 that said he was affiliated with this gang. It was the MS-13 or Tren de Aragua or whatever gang is the hot topic of the moment. There was never any evidence produced to that effect. The detective who argued the case, I think, was like later fired for misconduct. The whole thing was just an absolute shit show. Nothing ever came of it. Charges were never filed. The whole thing just went away, right? And they're using that as the justification to say, look, he's a member of MS-13. We've got evidence. No evidence of any consequence has been produced as far as I can tell. So they've scooped him off the street and they've sent him to an El Salvadorian mega prison with no hope of parole or release. So it literally is 1973 Chile, Pinochet's just fucking disappearing people off the streets. Like, that's what we're talking about.
This is the same sort of thing where we spoke about last week where they had... there were 2 flights that left, and there's been, I'm assuming, continuing flights.
3 flights. So 2 were in the air when the judge put down the order that said turn those flights around and come back. And they're like, they're in the air. They don't have orders in the air for some reason. And then there was a 3rd flight, which was still on the ground and took off after the order and still went through and landed. Yeah, right. And Bukele, the leader of El Salvador, literally tweeted like, oopsie poopsie, ha ha ha, we did it anyway. And then Marco Rubio retweeted it because we live in the darkest fucking timeline. So they're laughing about defying the Supreme Court. And there was subsequent to that, an order from that federal court judge that said you have to, quote, facilitate his release. You have to get him back because you admitted that you sent him there by mistake. He should not be there. He has had no due process in defiance of several articles of the Constitution. Unreasonable search and seizure, to right to a speedy trial, due process, all those sorts of things. You need to get him back. And the Trump administration says, oh, well, we tried to get him back. And they said, no, there's nothing we can do about it. We can muscle China on tariffs. We can muscle all the economies of the world saying they're coming from all over the world to kiss my ass because America's so powerful. But for a mega prison, which the Americans are paying for, apparently he's powerless. He's powerless to do anything to get Abrego Garcia back. And so there he sits in a prison for the crime of fucking nothing as of now, right? They've produced no evidence that he's done anything wrong. And the reporting on all of this suggests that 90% of the people that have been rendered in this way to El Salvador have no criminal records. There has been zero evidence produced of any criminality to suggest that they've done. Even if there were, you have a trial. This is what law is. This is what the laws are.
Yeah.
You have a trial. You determine whether the person is guilty of the offense that's been alleged. And then they go to jail in the United States. There's a process for this. It's called the criminal justice system. At no point does it say anywhere in the documents, in any of the laws, in the Constitution, that if someone suspects you of being a terrorist, you get rendered to a foreign fucking gulag. That is not the process, right?
Yeah. Like that's the crazy part about it. It's like, even if, because there's a whole mixture of like some of these people are like permanent residents or US citizens, or other ones maybe like legal or illegal immigrants, but you do the due process as to whether or not they've even committed an offense of any kind before you even consider deporting someone who's eligible to be deported or not. And
one of the people that was scooped up,
going straight to El Salvador.
One of the people that was scooped up was, it was an undocumented guy, but he had like temporary protected status. And there's video of him and his wife sitting in the car. The ICE agents are there outside the car and they're like, we're going to bust in and come get you. And they're like, we're just going to wait for our immigration lawyer to come here. He's told us we don't need to speak to you. You guys don't have a warrant, all this sort of stuff. We're just going to wait for he's coming. We're going to wait for the immigration lawyer to get here. And they said, fuck that. And they bust into the car, smash him, grab him, rip him out. The guy's been rendered to El Salvador. Guess what? It was the wrong fucking guy. Different guy. Not the same guy.
Dude.
Just some fucking guy who looked fucking South American. And they've just ripped him out of the car and sent him to a fucking forever prison black site. Like, this is what we're talking about here. And there was some fucking Democratic politician I want to wring their fucking neck. He was talking about, oh, well, the popular issue, we don't want to be talking about immigration. That's an issue where Republicans are strong and Democrats aren't strong. We need to be talking about the economy and price of eggs. I was like, motherfucker, we're having a full-blown constitutional crisis where citizens are getting scooped up off the street. Like fucking Pinochet getting disappeared. Like, are some of these people going to turn up in mass graves in 20 years? We don't fucking know. And you'll go, but the price of eggs, what? We got to talk about the price of eggs. This is not a winning issue for us. Well, how about it's the right fucking thing to do? How about this is completely immoral, what is happening here, and people need to see you fighting for your country, you fucking dipshits.
Yeah, there is a real thing there of like, if the literal like creation of the USSS
police state
is not a winning issue for you, then you should really fucking reconsider what you are doing with your life. Like,
there has been, some Democrats have arced up. So
there has been some response to it, which we'll talk about in a sec. Anyway, so I want to play. There's a clip of Bukele, who's the leader of El Salvador, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. So cool. He's in the Oval Office with Trump this week. And they're basically just having like a fun laugh about, sort of destroying people's rights. It's a little bit hard to hear, so we might sort of summarize it at the end. But this is, Trump and Bukele in the Oval Office, and there's a journalist asking questions about, the just the violation of human rights that's happening. Yeah, anyway, let's hear that.
I support it. Go ahead. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CNN. Low-rated. Which one is that?
The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
Well, let me ask Pam. Would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country, and in 2019. Two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you, Pam. Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
Fuck these ghouls.
Fuck these fucking people, man. Fuck them. Fuck them so hard. Obviously, needless to say, all of that is complete horseshit. Just complete bullshit. It was none of that was found by the district court. There was part of the affirmation by the Supreme Court which said something to the effect of like, we can't direct foreign policy, right? That wasn't the main component of the ruling. The thrust of the ruling was 9-0 from the Supreme Court. You need to get this, you need to facilitate, right? That was the word used. You need to facilitate his return to the United States, which means facilitate is a verb. You need to actively do stuff to get him back into the country. Right now, obviously, you can't make other countries do anything, but the whole idea that Trump couldn't get this guy...
Except all the times that the US has, right?
Right.
Except all the times that, I don't know, fucking you sneak in and kidnap him back and all that sort of shit that has definitely happened.
Yeah, so,
and the other thing they repeated, 3 times there was that was a member of MS-13,
which is not true. They've not provided any evidence to suggest that. Yeah.
And that he's been, that a court ruled twice that he was a member of
not true. They're just lying. They're just straight up lying. The idea that, like, the Supreme Court was clear. You have to facilitate the return of this guy back to the United States. You need to do whatever you can do as an administration to bring him back. And they're doing this cute little footsie of like, no, we're trying, but we can't. El Salvador's so powerful. There's nothing we could do against. It's like you're paying El Salvador to house the president. If all you needed to do was turn around and say, hey, can we have this guy back? And they would, or not just even that, to release him from prison. All El Salvador needs to do is unlock the doors, let the guy out, and then someone else can facilitate the return of him back to the United States, right? It's like, just because someone is deported doesn't mean they go to a forever prison. Like, those two things aren't on the same level, right?
No, that's not what it should mean, but it's exactly what they want.
Yes.
And it's
they're
exactly...
being all cute and laughing about it, being like, oh, and then Bukele goes, oh, how could I smuggle a terrorist back into the United States? Oh, little old me. And they're laughing and they're going, ha, 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 ha. Oh, it's ridiculous. There's nothing we can do. And that's exactly why they've set up these foreign fucking black sites in different countries to exploit is exactly this problem with the law that federal courts can only rule on stuff that happens in the United States. They can't compel foreign actors to do anything. This is exactly why they do it like this, right?
Yeah. And can I also just point, like, I know I've probably seen other examples of this and I've blocked them from my memory, but right at the start there with Trump just talking shit
about CNN
journalist, I don't think I've ever seen him, like, say all that sort of stuff so bluntly and consistently during the press conferences. Like he
During the actual question. Yeah.
He like truth socials it. You can't even say tweets on that. He truth socials it all the time. Or like in other instances, he'll just like at his rallies, he'll shit on the media and like all their slants and all that sort of stuff. But to preface responding to a question with all that, I don't think I've ever seen him do that.
He's been doing
gross.
that for a while.
Like, holy shit. Like it's
So he's done it. He did it throughout the campaign in various, when people would ask a question that he didn't like, in his response, he would preface
verbal
that he
them.
thought the question was somehow.
Yeah, why don't you say you're
Right.
doing a good job? Like all that sort of shit. But like it is one thing seeing it on the campaign trail. It's another thing seeing it in the Oval. Being like the president is shit talking CNN, like just adding a little editorializing around their comments before he directs someone else to answer the question.
Yeah.
Like,
A
it's so
private
gross.
citizen saying it campaigning for president is one thing, but and it's consistent obviously with his behavior, but fucking hell, yeah, to see the Oval Office response being that is nuts.
What this reminds me of, seeing him and his cronies and everyone in this office, sort of like applauding and laughing along to his comments whenever he says a joke. And look, what it reminds me of, legitimately, North Korea, is when Kim Jong-un, I always get him confused.
Kim Jong-un is his son and current one.
Is the current one.
Leader, yes.
Whenever Kim Jong-un says something, makes a joke, he turns around and everyone goes, ha, 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 you're so funny, boss. You're so funny, Tony Soprano. Right, ha, ha, ha. Clap, clap, clap. Because if you don't clap loud enough, you don't laugh loud enough, you get fucking shot by, an air defense, missile. Like, that's what happens. That's what happens when you offend the dear leader in an authoritarian regime. This is it's unbelievable what's happening. And the lack of pushback from, there are a couple of members of Congress, there was, Senator Chris Van Hollen, who went down to El Salvador and was able to meet Abrego Garcia, not in the prison, mind you. They facilitated a release from the prison to a motel, and he had him in civilian clothes, and he was able to interview him there, not in the prison, because they don't want American senators.
They don't want to see it.
Going in, seeing what the conditions are actually like, because they're woeful. They're torturing people, they're killing people allegedly in these centers. So they facilitated, this conversation in a third location, and he's reported back and sort of taken messages back to his wife. But the wife said, she made a speech basically saying, it was the first time I knew for a fact that he was alive. He hasn't been able to, I haven't been able to speak to him. His lawyers haven't been able to speak to him. This is the first time we've had, since March 15th when he was renditioned, this is the first confirmation that we have that we actually know he's alive. This is what happened. This is what was happening in Syria under Bashar al-Assad, as people were just taken to these fucking enemies of the regime, were taken to forever prisons and locked the fuck up, and you didn't see them for 10 years, 15 years. Sometimes they got killed. You never saw them again. When the regime fell earlier this year, there were people released from these Syrian prisons that had been there for decades. It was described as being like people emerging from the concentration camps. People are emaciated, fucked up, haven't seen the light of day in years. That is what these prisons are facilitating, these mega prisons, like the one in El Salvador. It's a fucking gulag.
Yeah. I find it wild when I know in the lead up to the election and then also in the aftermath of people naysaying anyone who felt that, we're going to start seeing SS style concentration camps for foreigners. And
even I thought that was
exactly
over.
What's happening.
Even I thought it was overwrought. I was like, he's a fascist. He's going to start cracking down on the media. I just can't believe it's gotten so fascistic so quickly. We're not even done with the first 100 days, right? And we're already at a constitutional crisis. I really thought it wouldn't be this hard and it wouldn't be this fast. And I am definitely bearish on the Trump regime. I would not describe.
You are a skeptical motherfucker.
I am already skeptical.
To be clear, the reason why we're saying and why the authors of the articles we're preaching from are saying it's a constitutional crisis is because obviously the Supreme Court should be the
check and balance.
They should have authority and the check and balance.
Oh yeah,
a co-equal branch of government, being the judiciary, is able to check. They say they can't say what the president's foreign policy is. No, of course they can't. But the Supreme Court sets the borders of what the president's authority is. That is the point of the Supreme Court, is to interpret the Constitution and make rulings on the validity of what the administration is doing. That is the purpose of the Supreme Court. Right?
The point being is if the Supreme Court says jump, the administration should be complying with that. Now, if the administration isn't complying with that, the question is, well, how do you make them comply? And this is probably why it's a crisis, is because there is no way to make them comply. Because
there is no way.
The administration, the president is also the chief of the head of
everything.
What am I trying to say? The what's the head of the military?
So the marshals,
commander in chief. Commander in chief.
So the marshals are the ones who would enact any orders of the Supreme Court, right? But the U.S. Marshals report to Donald Trump, and obviously he's not going to deploy them against himself. So yeah, a little itty bitty constitutional crisis. The Supreme Court says do this, and Trump says you and what fucking army? Right?
Yeah. The whole process of the checks and balances of the Constitution, the executive or the presidency and the Supreme Court in did I say the Supreme Court first? No, the Constitution, the executive, and the Supreme Court kind of thing there is all predicated on all three of those things, even though the Constitution's a piece of paper, but respecting each other.
Yes.
And it falls apart if just one of them says, no, we don't respect you or your authority. And you're like, fuck! I didn't know he knew how to do that.
But you're supposed to. It says on the document that you're supposed to.
Yeah. It's amazing that for all the the genius that is placed upon the founding fathers of they came up with this amazing system, that they've created this whole principle for the leading country of the free world that an action of but nah can just completely just
upend the entire system. But I mean, it's
laughable if it wasn't so scary.
I have never agreed with the valorization of the founding fathers. Americans seem to have a real big hard on for all these fucking guys. I was like, guys, they were 18th century fucking slaveholders. Okay, let's just put a bit of perspective around it.
Yeah,
the idea, the freedom of speech was the First Amendment, right? Which means they wrote the Constitution and they're like, fuck, we forgot freedom of speech. Put that on.
Yeah, fuck. Yeah, fuck. We forgot that part.
Right, so it's obviously not a perfect document. And the idea that, these people need to be valorized and held up as, Marvel Cinematic Universe, heroes of America is just ridiculous, right? But, they wrote a document which had pretty clear outlines as to the division of these powers. That is one thing that they did get right. The problem is that there is no political system in which the failure of the executive to give a fuck about the things that constrain him, will not break the political system, right?
The only thing that unbreaks it is if someone gets control of the military and forcibly removes them, right? Coups it, essentially. The way out is couing it, but
there's the 25th Amendment.
The president is the chief of the army. So
there's the 25th Amendment, which says that the president can be impeached and removed from power in cases of mental degradation or disability or unfitness for office, that sort of thing. But that needs to be enacted by his cabinet. That was only created in 1970 something. Prior to that, it wasn't even a consideration of how do we remove a president who's gone fucking rogue, right?
He's gone rogue, yeah.
Because it was always under the assumption that the American people would not elect a fucking tyrant to be the king. That is the whole purpose of America, is to not have a king. And that's why you're seeing all these no king protests happening all across America at the moment, is because they recognize the whole purpose of the existence of this nation is to be free from the yoke of tyranny being King George or King Trump, right?
I
guess they'll have to do with their king. They've basically got a King George equivalent where he's just off on his fucking meds and going loony and
off his face.
Although,
this reference will mean nothing to Adam, but I always come back to the Simpsons reference of Homer when he was little. I love child Homer. He's so cute when he's got his full head of hair and his little silly voice. But then he watches I think JFK on TV or something, and he goes into the kitchen and says look, ma, I'm like President Kennedy. He's like, I want to be president. And his mother says, don't you think Abe, to his father, he could, our little Homer could one day be president? And Abe's like, are you kidding? We've got a whole system in place that makes sure that idiots like you can never be president. And I'm like, like that joke's so funny at the time because
Almost.
haha, unsupportive father, but it's like, oh no, you don't though. I always think about that moment being like, oh, that takes on a whole new meaning now.
Anyway, so David Brooks from the New York Times reckons we should just go full coup.
David Brooks said so. There's an article from the New York Times.
A verb? When you do a coup, when you facilitate a coup d'etat, are you cooing it? Are we cooing it now? Cause he lives, so let's coup it. Like, is that the expression?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think "do a coup" is the correct vernacular, but yeah, I'm not sure what the correct term is. Yeah, it's like the Nutbush. So, a very conservative opinion writer from the New York Times, David Brooks, has said, "Time for a civic uprising." That's the name of the article, and he basically
that's where we are now. That's
where we are. Like conservative establishment, reporters from the New York Times are saying, hey, basically, we need to have a mass, like he doesn't say let's have a revolution, let's have a coup, but he is saying that Trumpism is threatening the national order. Yeah. Legal systems are crumbling. He's going after the press. He's going after law firms, Paul Weiss and Skadden and all these other firms that were, he's going after the institutions like the universities like Harvard, which we'll talk about in a sec. He's threatening all of that.
For the New York Times... Yeah, to see the New York Times calling
have
for
a call to arms.
Uprising,
that's pretty unreal.
It's crazy. It's wild.
So far, each sector Trump has assaulted has responded independently. The law firms seek to protect themselves. The universities separately try to do the same. Yes, a group of firms has now banded together in support of the firm Perkins Coie, or Coie, I don't know how to pronounce that. But in other cases, individual law firms are trying to secure their separate piece with Trump. Yes, Harvard eventually drew a line in the sand, but Columbia cut a deal. This is a disastrous strategy that ensures that Trump will trample one victim after another. He divides and conquers. Slowly, many of us are realizing that we need to band together, but even these efforts are insular and fragmented. Several members of the Big Ten Conference, those are universities, are working on forming an alliance to defend academic freedom. Good, but that would be 18 schools out of roughly 4,000 degree-granting American colleges and universities. And then he goes on to talk about some of the rallies led by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Cortez and some of these other No Kings movement and other big mass protests that are starting to occur that I mentioned before.
And he essentially calls out.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, he essentially calls out, we need to do Selma again.
Yeah. It needs to be a mass civil rights.
Selma march.
Yeah, a black, civil rights movement basically is what we need. Because if we don't all band together, we're going to get trampled individually, one by one. That's the playbook for authoritarian regimes. The first rule of Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny is do not obey in advance. Okay? Why? Because it gives you exactly what we saw with Paul Weiss, with Skadden, where individually organizations get approached by the organization. They say, we're going to crush you. We're going to fuck you up. We're going to take away your ability to represent your clients in federal court. Other law firms, like the pieces of shit they are, then go and start preying on those firms' clients because they know they're vulnerable. They start fleeing in droves. The law firm thinks, fuck, we're going to go broke if we don't do something. And then they capitulate to Trump. They say, we're going to give you X amount of thousands of pro bono hours for Trump causes and basically give you millions of dollars worth of free legal work in order to back off. And if every organization does, it makes sense for each individual organization to do that by themselves. Right? Because it's a collective action problem.
When they all do it.
If I don't look after my own firm, I'm going to get trampled. I'm going to get fucked. All these people are going to be out of a job, right? But if everyone does that separately, well, then you're all fucked, right? Not to be that guy that quotes the Holocaust poem. I didn't say anything about the communists because I wasn't a communist. I didn't say anything about the trade unionists because I wasn't a trade unionist. But that is the kind of environment that we're living in now where you guys, American institutions, need to band together. And even conservative columnist David Brooks recognizes that there needs to be I can't overstate. I like David Brooks. Okay, I think he's a smart writer. I think he's really intelligent. I recently read one of his books recently about was American. Nearly finished it. There's this Road to Character, which is meant to be really good, and The Social Animal, which is about how success and institutions build up success in America. Right, how people succeed. Very smart, very intelligent writer. But he is a conservative guy. He works for the New York Times. He's in his 60s or whatever. This is not hero of the Soviet Union calling for revolution. That's not this guy, right? So when this guy is saying you need a mass protest movement, you need mass mobilization, you have to take it seriously. Those rallies that AOC and Bernie are doing across the country, they had a rally in Utah the other day. There was 30,000 people in the conservative state of Utah, right? Where Mitt Romney is from, right? Where he is the
Mormons,
like Mormons, extremely conservative state. And they had a 30,000 person rally in Utah. They had an even bigger one in Los Angeles recently as well, which is obviously Los Angeles. California's a conservative bastion. But like the fact that there are places all over the country where these protests and rallies are kicking off, I think is really heartening. And it needs, like, you got to step it up. This is the sort of shit that we need, is mass mobilization, people putting their bodies on the tracks to stop what is coming. Because if you don't, we know what happens. We've read history. We see what happens when we don't, right? We know.
So to get into some of the microcosms of what David Brooks is rallying against and the reasons for it, Trump has basically, or the Trump administration has threatened to withdraw funding from Harvard. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so that's one of the stories. So basically, initially Harvard went proactively cap in hand to the administration, said, "Hey, we saw what you did at Columbia. What can we do to help?" And the Trump basically,
how can we not be fucked?
How can I not get fucked by the long dick of the Trump administration, please? And basically, Trump issued this set of rules that Harvard would need to follow to not get fucked. And it was so long, so arduous, so complex, and basically would cede the administration of the university to the state, controlling who runs what departments, what they can teach, all this sort of shit. Absolute, complete nonsense. There's no way that they could ever comply with that, right? So they issued then a public statement saying academic freedom is super. Now that we realize it's completely ridiculous, I mean, there's no way we could possibly comply. Academic freedom is of the utmost importance to us, and there's no way that we're going to comply with any of this. Now that we know what the score is. Given that Harvard has got something like a $50 billion endowment, they've got fuck you money. So they've decided to say fuck you to the Trump administration. And the Trump administration says, fuck me, fuck you. And what they've done is decided to pull federal funding from Harvard, and they're also threatening Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. Now, for those who don't know, a large portion of the students that attend Harvard are foreign students, right? This would...
Well, it's such a reputation, right? Like, even we know from every movie we've ever watched. Oh, yeah. He went to Harvard, you say?
Yeah, Harvard's, on many different vectors, Harvard is meant to be certainly one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Let's talk about it that way.
I mean, Legally Blonde, they went to Harvard Law School, right?
She went to Harvard Law, and she slayed, bend and snap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So... the idea that Harvard wouldn't be able to enroll foreign students is like a direct threat to their bottom line. Now, Harvard has a massive endowment, right? It's a $50 billion, I think $50 billion, something like that. $50 billion endowment. 53. Sorry. So what's $3 billion amongst friends? 53.
A very well endowed university.
Hello. Hung. Get it, ladies. Slay. So I don't know who that's for.
I just like to throw you off a little.
Thank you. So basically, Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem also announced on Wednesday the termination of 2 DHS grants, Department of Human Services, totaling more than $2.7 million. So they're mobilizing the federal apparatus to cut off all sort of funding and support to Harvard and try and starve them as an institution. Now, Harvard's lucky because they got a massive endowment. The way Harvard's been described by many people is a hedge fund with an educational institution attached, right? They really value the primacy of this. Yeah. This endowment, this fund is basically an ability, the ability for them to continue to create wealth, in the millions and billions of dollars going forward into the future. Yeah. And endowments are meant to be like people donate money to the university and it supports the university's endeavors. They want to build a new building, well, that money comes from the endowment. But as these endowments for these Ivy League universities have gotten larger and larger and increasingly financialized, it's become its own kind of like cottage industry of like mini educational hedge funds, right? The problem is they don't want to take money out of the endowment and spend it on day-to-day administration of programs because that means number go down and number has to go up, as we know. So
up and to the right.
Up and to the right. Exactly right, Tom. That's everything you need to know from the NBA. Just to let you know, and the graph needs to go up and to the right. So as long as you've got that sorted.
Sick. Goldman Sachs, if you're looking,
if you're listening,
I'm here. Up and to the right.
Yep.
Hire me.
Buy low, sell high.
To be clear, what we haven't actually sort of said is that what Kristi Noem's asking for, what the
Yeah.
administration is asking for, and this is what they've done in Colombia and other places as well. So she wrote Harvard a letter demanding records on what she called illegal and violent activities of Harvard's foreign student visa holders. They wanted that by April 30.
So they're talking about people who participated in pro-Palestinian protests, presumably, right?
Yeah, basically. And then they've said, if Harvard cannot verify if Harvard cannot verify it is in full compliance with its reporting requirements, the university will lose its privilege of enrolling foreign students. So
they've asked for a whole bunch of like ridiculous shit. That's just one of the things that they've asked for, and that's why Harvard's told them to go pound sand. But what we see, these universities banding together and saying, okay, well, like having to form their own NATO defense pact against the administration, is crazy that we're here in the year of our Lord 2025, but that is what is necessary in order to prevent the erosion of all of these different institutions. Because we saw what happened with Paul Weiss, the law firm. We saw what happened with Skadden, the law firm, is that when they're together, when they're separated, they get bullied. When you band together, it's much harder to bully the top 10 or top 18 Ivy League organizations all at once, right? So we need to see more, but it's going to be hard for all of these organizations and institutions across their various industries with various different, a lot of these people, these organizations are competitors with one another. Then there's another collective action problem on the other side of do I want to boost my competitors, or do I want to try and steal their clients, or do I want to, do I want to capitalize off their downfall? But I think everyone needs to put all of that shit aside right now and just focus on we all are in this together in terms of not getting steamrolled by the administration. Because if you don't, you're all separately fucked.
Yeah, this is like all the, the seminal comic, the Infinity Gauntlet. We like all the heroes and also some of the villains. They got to put their shit aside and get together because Thanos is coming with the gauntlet. Yep. And
know what?
Not that any of these universities have. There's 18 of them that are sort of starting to get this together. There's
that group of the Big 10.
4,000 or something, other education institutions.
That's what I just said, yeah. So that's what I mean. Obviously those represent the richest ones, but, like I said, there's a lot of other organizations that need to get on board for this in order to make it work. Do you listen when I talk, Adam, or is it just kind of like you just hear like a whooshing sound?
I did. That's where I got it. But what I'm saying is that we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
And it's all very well to say, oh, this will be great. But it could very well not be great because this may never happen.
I'm saying it's not great. I'm right there with you. I'm right there on the it's not great train. If I had a one sentence logo to pay Unnatural Selection, it's not great. That's the tagline of the show.
And I think, to be fair, from just my perspective, I think when you talk, George, I mainly hear just like a sort of sound, but then occasionally what bleeds through is something that I can turn into a weird pop culture reference or an endowment joke.
I was going to say, Tom,
otherwise I'm not here.
I was so ready to make fun of you for the MCU reference. It's actually perfect. He is Thanos and he has the gauntlet. The Infinity Stones, one is the judiciary, one is Congress. One's the House of Congress, one's the Senate. He's got all the stones, okay? He's this close to clicking his fingers. We've got to get that Spider-Man contraption to keep the hand open. That's what we need at this point. Because
we need Thor to go for the head this time.
Oh, man. If Chris Pratt, loses his shit and mucks things up at the last minute, and, I will not forgive him. It was just a whale. So as I mentioned, we are starting to see some of these mass mobilization movements. There is a clip from a 91-year-old Republican Senator Chuck Grassley being confronted by his constituents. This is a crisis that is so obvious that even Republican constituents in Iowa can get their heads around it. So here's them verbaling, again, nonagenarian Senator Chuck Grassley at a town hall in Iowa.
Senator Grassley, we're not right
just a minute until it's quiet so I can hear you.
Senator Grassley, right now we're not. Right now we're not. These changes have been taking place, and that's what concerns me so much.
Process.
It hurts.
No process.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with laws.
I would welcome refugees and I would welcome people that need asylum.
I would welcome refugees, and I would welcome people.
From El Salvador.
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm not going to.
Because that's not a power of Congress.
That's not a power of Congress.
Said to bring him back.
Judges are. And the president isn't upholding the Constitution.
He's defying the
You're on the
Constitution.
Judiciary Committee.
Trump don't care.
If I get an order to pay a ticket for $1,200 and I just say no, does that stand up? Because he's got an order from the Supreme Court and he's just said no.
Yeah. He just said, screw it.
I'll be able to answer your question.
You ignored my letter.
Guatemala.
You ignored my... What a diva. What a diva. You ignored my letter.
Yeah, there's a guy there in a
Get him,
red
Carol.
hat that says something again on it. I couldn't tell if it was a Make America Great Again hat or not, or if it's a gag one. But I hope it's a legit Make America Great Again hat, because to see an old white guy in a Make America Great Again hat saying, "Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador?" What an image.
This is a
that's
thoroughly
incredible.
Republican. Iowa is a thoroughly Republican district, a thoroughly Trump district. Okay, to have town halls where there are Trump supporters, people who voted for Trump, presumably who voted for Chuck Grassley, come in and say, "Hey, the Constitution.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? The Supreme Court said you have to bring him back. Why aren't you bringing him back?" You know, like that. That's pretty that's pretty surprising to me. To think that even the people that are deepest in with Trump can still wrap their heads around this and go, yeah, no, that's not right. What about since when does due process get an applause at a Republican town hall?
I almost, the cynic in me, the cynic in me has that maybe what their concern there is like, why have we been supporting Republicans all our lives so you could stack the Supreme Court with patsies and fucking goons that when they rule on something, you just ignore it? I want them to rule away people's rights and you're ignoring them?
You don't ignore my
can't ignore the
patsies.
Supreme Court. That was the whole goal. You got rid of abortion. You're supposed to outlaw anyone who's not white and you're not listening?
It really seems like they are, obviously shocked and appalled by what is happening to Kilmar Abrego Garcia and others. And, they hear at this town hall to voice their displeasure. You have to assume that they're all, look at them. Look at these dumb, dopey, fat Americans. They're obviously Republicans, right? Like, so... If even these people can wrap
they're very dopey, but
I'm just saying there's one black guy in the corner and I think he's staff. So just you look at this, it paints a picture that even Republicans in deep red Republican Trump districts are upset about this and calling this out at town halls. That is meaningful, I think. So
100%.
The problem is that the US voter base waking up, to the fact that they've voted in a Nazi. By the time enough people have really twigged, and enough of the media apparatus and the social media commentators and everything else, but enough of them have really come around to how bad it is, it'll be too late. So,
well, maybe history is not like history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And I am convinced that enough people are flagging this. Like, you were not getting this kind of pushback in 1930s era Nazi Germany. Like, you just weren't, right?
You were, but they were brutally repressed.
Yeah,
violently on the street.
But we're not seeing that aspect of brutal, violent repression.
Not yet.
Okay, so there is media out there. There are commentators out there that are pushing back, that are talking about this. You are seeing mass movements which aren't being put down, right? Like, I think it can be early enough to stop what's coming, and just because it failed last time round doesn't mean it has to fail this time round. Like, we are human beings with knowledge and insight as to what's happened previously. We can make different decisions. We can do things differently. Just because that's how it went before doesn't mean that's how it has to go this time, right?
No, but
I think there's a lot of fatalistic, but you're not the only one, Adam. I'm hearing a lot of commentary online being like, well, democracy's lost. Like, I guess we'll just move to Canada or whatever. Like, that. There's a lot of people saying shit like that, and there's a reason that, The Handmaid's Tale and other pieces of fiction, like I feel like sci-fi and alternate history fiction, the one thing it is particularly good at is like psychologically readying the populace for things that might happen. And I think that's something that The Handmaid's Tale has done, the novel and both the TV series have done really well, is that it's alerted people to the dangers of here's what happens when you overly humanize fascists and you allow them to say their piece. This is what happens, right? And I think seeding those ideas into the populace means that when they see fascism come along in their real life, maybe they're a little bit more ready for the consequences of what might happen if they allow it to fester. And so, you know, there's tens of millions of Americans who are on board with Trump doing this, right? But there's tens and tens of millions more that are definitely not on board with it. And he's losing fans day by day in terms of how he's conducting not just this situation with the El Salvadorian, I don't know what to call them, prisoners, you know, illegal detainees.
Prisoners, they're being held.
Political prisoners. But you're also seeing pushback on other vectors like, you know, Elon Musk and Doge and the firings, and like he's just pissing a lot of people off. And I hope that's enough to get people out onto the streets and stop it, you know. It may not be. You might be right, Adam. You might be right to be cynical, but like it's not over yet. And I think that this is a comedy podcast. I'd like to remind everyone. Get caught trying. Get caught trying. Yeah. Exactly. You know, this is the last gasp, because if you fail to do anything at this stage, they're going to start loading people on fucking trains. Like that's what's next. Yeah. So
I don't think we had it in the rundown here, and like, you know, the audio is really hard to make out, so I don't think it'll be great to play. But there was that clip you sent Adam and I privately, George, of Trump and
Bukele.
I've forgotten his name, but El Salvador president, dictator man, laughing about like, oh well, it's homegrown problems.
Homegrown's next.
Right?
That's a quote from Trump.
Homegrown's next. From
Homegrowns
Trump,
are next.
Like, U.S. people we know are U.S. citizens. And problems. Yeah, we'll ship them off to your mega prisons out of the country as well. Like, ha 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 ha, funny.
And they're laughing about it. Yeah, homegrowns are next. He said you're going to have to build 5 more of those prisons because homegrowns are next. So if that doesn't activate you, you know, like get up out of your chair, go to a rally, go to a protest. The time, if you're waiting for like, when is the red siren going off? When is the time? Now's the fucking time. Okay, the time is here. The time is now. David Brooks is a hero of the revolution. That's how you know it's time.
David Brooks is telling you to become ungovernable.
Yes.
David Brooks.
Yes.
The New York Times wants you to become ungovernable. That's where we are right now.
Yes. Similarly, and adjacent to all this shitfuckery, Donald Trump has launched a scheme to profit of his tariff policies via Truth Social.
Because why else do it?
Because, of course, now this story alone, in any other time, remember when Jimmy Carter had to sell his peanut farm because they didn't want like legislation about big peanuts to like give him a conflict of interest?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, it was a pretty wild day on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, 79, you were there. So the idea, so basically what Truth Social is, so Truth Social, you might know, is the social media platform, quote unquote, that Donald Trump has been behind and promoting and sort of messaging from. Now, the Trump Media and Technology Group, or TMTG as it is known, is the parent company of this platform, Truth Social. And basically, this business, and I speak professionally here as someone who has an MBA, this business is a piece of shit. So, ding, 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 yes, MBA. I'm not going to ring the bell because my son's napping. But it's a piece of shit business. And it's fake business that's a piece of shit. It lost something like hundreds of millions of dollars last year. The whole artifice exists as a way of boosting Donald Trump and his, abilities to, directly corrupt him with dollars.
It's a propaganda platform.
It's a propaganda platform. It's a fake company, right? So what they've announced is a series of actively managed investment accounts. TMTG is marketing these as, quote, Truth Social branded separately managed accounts, unquote, as a way to invest in companies that benefit from Trump's political agenda. Trump, as you may guess, remains the majority shareholder of TMTG. In the April 15 press release, TMTG said the new investment accounts would offer, quote, investors access to curated thematic investment strategies rooted in American values and profit priorities. Well, I'll tell you what, the themes are, quote, made in America, and things like faith and values, liberty and security, and energy independence. So essentially, they're setting up funds that they know, filled with companies that they know will actively benefit from Trump's policies in order to attract investors. So Trump knows who he's going to tariff. All you need to do is invest in this fund, and you'll be invested in the companies that Trump isn't going to tariff.
Yeah. So these are
and that he knows are going to do well. And he obviously makes money
insider
off.
These are the insider trading ETFs.
It's insider trading the musical.
Yeah.
This is
Trump gets a
cut off the growth of their funds. The typical fee structure for these sorts of funds is 2 and 20. 2% of the total fund, right, every year, and 20% of the profits. So if he knows what the profits are going to be, because he dictates the policy that decides whether these companies are going to be profitable or not, that is a direct way of steering American public policy and turning it into cash, which goes into his wallet. There's no, in case you're wondering, hey, George, that can't be it. Surely there's more to the scam. It can't just be as simple as Trump decides which companies are profitable and then makes money off investing on those companies. Surely that's too simple. That couldn't be a Bond villain plot. Where's the skimming 1 cent off every person's transaction 1 million times? There's got to be something more complicated that would make this a real villain plot. And I would say, no, that's it. That's the whole plot, is just telling you where to put your money, so in places where he knows it's going to go up, and then making money off that. That's the whole scheme. That's it. It's just insider trading. That's it.
Yep.
As the president doing it.
Yep.
Nixon got in trouble for suggesting obliquely that someone should break in to the Democratic establishment and wire it up. He didn't even necessarily directly order it. And then it was 2 years of investigations, and it was a whole thing, and he had to resign in disgrace.
But also people did break in and do it.
People did break in and do it, yeah. But as far as I'm aware, Nixon didn't say go break into the DNC headquarters.
No.
He was just go take care of it, right? He said it like a mobster.
Yeah, not to be the devil's avocado for Watergate, but I think that probably would have gone down very differently if no one ever actually did break in and wire it up. If he just made the suggestion, it would have been a pretty big slap on the wrist, but still a slap on the wrist. But the fact that someone did take that idea and run with it made it a whole lot worse.
And they lied about it, and there were investigations. Hang on. Let me just make this point. That scandal, political scandal, was so famous. They didn't even successfully land the bugs, right? They got caught in the commission of the crime, right? Doing the crime. They lied about it. There were pardons. The whole thing was such a disgrace that the suffix gate, something gate, is now shorthand for a political scandal. That's how big Watergate was at the time. 2 years worth of congressional investigations, hearings, people got investigated, resigned, people went to jail.
Yeah, Nixon resigned before they could impeach him.
Nixon resigned, and before Nixon was able to resign, they put away Spiro Agnew, his vice president, because they didn't want Spiro Agnew taking over, because he was another corrupt piece of shit as well, taking bribes. So they had got rid of him, and that's how Gerald Ford came to be. So it was a mired quagmire of corruption and scandal around Watergate. That is the standard that we have for corruption and scandals. We use the suffix gate. Watergate, Staplegate, whatever the fucking thing is, we whack gate on the end of it to say it's as bad of a political scandal as this.
Yeah. If I could just throw in for context for people who don't understand history as well as George, Spiro Agnew is the headless guy that the head of Richard Nixon in Futurama has around with him, the headless body of Agnew.
Yes, that is the Futurama reference there. Yeah, thank you. Former vice president of Nixon's. That scandal, to my mind, pales in comparison to this. People didn't make money, they got caught. The system found out they worked. Yes, people got pardoned, and it was a bit of a shit show, but it was in the press for years. This massive scandal. This is that times a million, as far as I'm concerned. It is a way for people to directly bribe Trump and put money in his pocket, which is similar, co-equal to the other scandal financial scandal of his meme coin, which again allows you to just deposit money directly into the Trump apparatus in order to directly benefit Donald Trump. Like it is crazy that this is a 5-alarm corruption fire, and it is like story number 5 on this week's rundown. Like in any other year, this would be like a 3-month story. You know, there'd be Benghazi investigations for months and months. You know, like
I don't know. It involves understanding how like markets work, and you know, I admit that makes my brain go when it gets too in depth. So like, you know, Watergate, people at least got it. Whilst in this instance, you start, I don't know, sometimes you start explaining it or start trying to understand it and you're like, oh, God, this is dry. But yeah, you're right. It's a gajillion times worse than that.
Yeah, it is direct financial benefit from the policy. Like it is, they are going to make case law in the future about conflict of interest, and this is going to be the example that they will use in legal case law going forward, when it's like a clear-cut textbook case of conflict of interest. The president makes policy that creates money and benefits him. You know, like...
Well, I mean, there is always the possibility that the managed what was it? Thematic? What was the...
Thematic investing.
Funds.
That actually fails miserably, and a bunch of people put their money in to a Ponzi scheme, which never actually gets up off the ground.
Just because it's great. Thematic investment strategies.
It's thematic
investment strategies.
No. It's not going to fail, Adam. It's got the word strategy.
Strategy.
So
when it says thematic, I always think of like, is it like an autumnal theme? Maybe there's like, you know,
it's a winter's ball theme. Yeah.
Anyway,
under the sea dance.
Under the sea dance. So like, I'm looking at the Trump coin, and that is like from what its peak at like.
But it doesn't matter the value of the coin.
On the 20th of
the value of the coin is irrelevant.
$72. It's now $8.
The point is the transaction fees. Every time someone puts money in, a cut goes to Trump. So it doesn't matter if the coin's worth fucking nothing. It is worth nothing, by the way. Cryptocurrency is a scam. The fact that people are putting money in is
what I'm getting at. Trump's benefiting, but all the people who
everyone else gets stooged.
Now
oh yeah, 100%.
Everyone's.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's inside trading. Yeah, it's bad, but also like I don't know what's worse. Is it worse that he could potentially just stooge a bunch of people out of their money, or is it like assuming everyone does well out of it? Is it then just as bad that he's the president of the United States?
It's both bad. Both are bad. All of it's bad.
Both are bad.
What's worse though? Is my question.
What's worse? I don't know. What's worse? Everyone loses all their money, or people gain money corruptly? I don't know. It's all bad, man.
Yeah, I don't know. What is the ethical?
Unnatural selection. It's not good. None of it's good.
Yeah, none of it's good, but which is worse? That is like the tagline of our show. But if you're wondering what we could do, maybe to. How do we, as Australians, fight back against all this? It seems what we're doing is not going to the US. Seems to be all we can do, depriving them of their sweet, sweet tourist dollars from countries they allegedly like.
Yeah,
which is a blip on the radar, really. But anyway.
So,
okay, Adam. Geez, way to poop on the parade. I thought here we were standing up with David Brooks. We're all there on the picket line being like, don't go to America. And Adam's like, it's fucking bullshit. You're doing nothing.
Here on the barricades. No, I wouldn't go to America. So about 4,600
You wouldn't get let in. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
They'd be like, George Sipos. And they'd be like, you're not coming in. Sorry, bro.
Legitimately, if I'm me and my name, Jorge, Jorge, right? I would be concerned going to America that I'd get fucking scooped up and deported. There is a 0% chance that I would go to America, right? Least of all because you want to support their economy, which is taking a big hot dump, tariff shit on the world. But because
also I don't want to get shot.
I don't want to get fucking rounded up.
It seems like
numerous
getting more and more dangerous
over the last 3 months of Australians, people from all around the world, just getting put in detention for up to 19 days in some cases.
I saw this one woman from the UK.
People that are trying to leave the United States, so Australian citizens or UK citizens trying to leave the United States, and not being able to leave. Yeah. And they get put in detention for 19 days. They're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll leave. And they're like, no, you have to stay in detention. And there's this whole,
one woman I saw was this white, middle-class girl from the UK. She was staying on some some website called Workstay or something like that, where it's like you go and you do like, house sit for someone and they let you stay in their house or whatever, things like that. And she had a whole US trip. She leaves to go to Canada. And they say, you got the wrong visa. You've got to go back into the United States and then reapply, right? She goes, okay.
Hang on, the US said that or Canada?
Canada said that.
Canada said that.
She goes back into the United States and they said, you should have had a working visa. You're in violation of your visa. Come to this fucking detention center. She was there for 30 days. 30 days for having the wrong fucking visa. What you could argue is almost certainly an innocent mistake, right? And they detained her for 30 days. And it wasn't until they started talking about it in the press that they ended up, sort of picking up on it and turning around and releasing her.
Oh, yeah.
People are getting scooped up by ICE for no fucking reason whatsoever. There is not a chance in hell that I would go to the United States. And obviously other people think the same thing because, the amount of Australian visitors to America has dropped 11%. That's the...
Which sucks because Hawaii is great. I love Hawaii.
I'm sure Hawaii is great. But, Thailand is probably nice as well. We're just visiting White Lotus locations, but Sicily could also be nice.
Yep. my wife told me a mutual friend had a story of just that ICE at the US border thought them having a layover in Hong Kong was suspicious.
Yeah.
Their flight, just the layover was in Hong Kong, and then they get to the States and that's suspicious. But luckily, given you can have the situation of 30 days in fucking detention, like we just talked about, they just sent them back to Australia. So just not even guaranteed getting in. But
that's fine. Send me back.
Crazy shit like that. Whatever fucking reason that they want to do. And I know this is such a first world problem, but as someone who's about to myself go overseas for the first time in a very long time, not to the States, and it's certainly reading all this sort of stuff is making me go crossing international borders sounds like the most stressful thing you can possibly do.
Guardian Australia last week reported the case of an Australian man with a working visa who was returning to the United States, who was detained and deported on his return. This man alleged border officials called him, quote, retarded, unquote, and boasted Trump is back in town. Right? This is the sort of unhinged shit that's happening on the US border right now. Alice Fraser, who's an Australian comedian who regularly tours in Europe and the United States, received legal advice saying, you've got a lot of jokes about Trump and Musk, don't go. And so she's cancelled the US tour that she was about to embark on because she doesn't think she can safely be in the United States given the material that she's done in the past. That is incredibly concerning. This is Soviet Union level clampdowns and chilling effect on free speech. It's very scary.
Yeah. For the land of the free,
Australia, it's
to do this.
Also...
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say was that it's not just Australia. This is happening for all countries around the world. Immigration and sort of tourism into the United States has dropped substantially. So
from Europe and everywhere.
Whether or not collectively, every single country on the earth's not going. Somehow it affects the bottom line. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But
I guess tourism industries in the States and all. I know it's probably a drop in the ocean for say Disney for Disneyland and stuff, but probably Disneyland Florida, if tourism internationally is dropping, they're those kinds of icons. Anything that people go those are such touristy spots. Oh, you went to see the Statue of Liberty.
There are whole sectors of the American economy that are predicated on
Hollywood
tourism.
sign, all that sort of stuff, all the basic bitch tourist stuff that people make fun of people for wanting to go see. Yeah, that all those industries all drop.
And the largest drops are from, predictably, South American countries, places like Colombia, places like the Dominican Republic, where, there's people who look like me, who have names like me, right? Who are looking at the United States and going, fuck no, I don't want to get scooped up and sent to some El Salvadorian prison because I got a tattoo with my mum's name on my left ankle. That's insane. Of course I'm not going to the fucking United States.
George, I think they'd see a silent letter in your surname and be like, what the fuck is that?
Greek and Spanish and Italian? Makes no fucking sense. Lock him up.
Yeah.
Lock him up. Gulag for you, mate. I was like,
weirdly
mate,
enough-
I'm Australian. What are you doing?
Yeah. He died. Come on, let me in.
The dingo's got my baby. Another ship on the Barbie. Oh, mate.
So percentage change in number of visitors to the US, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Germany, Ireland, Spain, Ecuador, South Korea, United Kingdom, France, Australia. That's all dropped.
Yeah,
but then at the other end of the
dropped
scale,
the most from Colombia. It's down 32.5%.
What I'm getting at, though, what's weird is that on the other end of the scale, from Poland and Israel and Taiwan, it's all up and increased.
Well, yeah, so there's no accounting for taste.
I mean, Israel, I can, I guess, understand given the
Poland one.
Poland. Yeah, interesting. Given the fascistic nature of the states, that Poland is well up and Germany is way down. So, I mean, Germany's obviously learnt from their history. Poland, on the other hand, are like, this seems great, despite them not learning from the history.
If I recall correctly, there is or was like a pretty like far right government in Poland. I think maybe in the last election they got voted out, but there is like a significant contingent of the Polish electorate that's like really into far right wing politics. So could be that.
I guess that even further makes my point. Like what? Yeah. Poland is like. That's what kicked all that off.
You see the same thing in Hungary. You see the same thing in Austria. There's been a real swing. You know, one of my friends did their thesis on this. There's been a real swing to right-wing, conservative politics all across Europe. You see Giorgia Meloni in Italy. You see Viktor Orban in Hungary. You see, the rise of figures like Marine Le Pen. Even though she hasn't gotten into power, she represents an increasingly large contingent of their voters. You see Reform over in the UK and Nigel Farage, which has been a man who's been more or less a political pariah, is run for office, I don't know, over a dozen times, only just now has gotten in. Like, they're representing larger and larger slices of the electorate because people are seeing what's happening, and there's a certain portion of the population for whom they see these things. They see mass prisons, they see mass arrests, they see all this shit, and they go, I like it, sounds good. There's people in my family who are accosting me at Easter the other day that were saying how much they like Doge and how good it was. That public servants were getting cut left and right, and I had to say, yeah, but like, look at the things that they're cutting. Look at the things that get reinstated. You can't just have someone coming in, we all agree government could be more efficient, but you can't just go and take a hatchet. It's life and death. And you're having to explain why this is bad because natively there are some people that get it, that like it, that want it. They want the fascism. They want the hard cuts, they want 36,000 people cut from the public service. There are people that see Peter Dutton saying that he doesn't want people working from home anymore and go, good, I like that. They're small. There's not a lot of them, but they are growing. There's people who see this fascistic shit and are into it, and there's always going to be those. But the thing that concerns me is they're growing. Their amount of primary vote in not just in Europe, but here in Australia as well. You look at Pauline Hanson's One Nation with Pauline Hanson, their share of the primary vote is growing because they're taking away from the coalition. There are all these people that are moving further right. Well, at least the coalition is behaving in such a way as to indicate that they are concerned that is going to happen more, right? They are pandering to the far right wing of the party because they don't want those voters going to One Nation, right? So as to whether the actual numbers have increased year on year for the primary vote over the last couple of election cycles for One Nation, I don't know specifically, but
I don't think it has.
But the way the Liberal Party is behaving is that they're showing that they are concerned about that. They're more concerned about their right flank than their left flank in this election cycle.
They're not trying to pull left-leaning Labor voters over to them. They're trying to make sure that people who would vote for Clive Palmer or Pauline Hanson
vote for them
at least preference them under the Liberal person.
Exactly right.
Yeah. They've done very well. Those Conservative, they tend to do better at looking at some of the stats here from Wikipedia because I love quality sources. In state elections. So federally doesn't always go their way, but in state elections they do. Yeah, they are stealing percentages of the vote on the increase.
And that's what they're seeing federally. That's why the Liberal Party is concerned about it. Speaking of the Liberal Party,
Yeah, speaking of leaning more over to the right and gaining ground.
Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese had their second leaders debate, the first public one. The first one was on Sky News, so that was kind of a practice run. No one watched it because it was on Sky News.
Well, yeah, of course no one watched it. Even the Liberal Party didn't watch it because they said Dutton won.
Yes, yeah, they didn't even look at it.
We talked about that.
So this week, was the second leaders debate on ABC, which allowed actual people to watch. And there were, it was interesting to see. So the things that concerned me the most, I think, were Peter Dutton's kind of reluctance to acknowledge climate change and the effects of climate change. There was a question about some recent, sort of disaster, and Peter Dutton was saying, we don't know to the extent to which, global warming was related to this specific event. And I was like, my brother in Christ, in the year 2025, are we still doing climate denial? Is that really still where we are at? Like, that was shocking to me to see that is where the discussion still is in the Liberal Party, as we go, we don't know what specifically climate change is causing. It's like, okay, but we know it makes everything worse. So like even by suggesting that, you're kind of undermining the whole idea of climate change being a real thing, right? So
he said something along the lines of I'll leave it to the scientists. I won't comment there because the scientists will be in a better place to say whether that's the case. And it's like, and the scientists are overwhelmingly saying it is.
Yeah. There's modeling now which shows after big events like climate, so what's the word I'm looking for? Natural disasters, the extent to which climate change exacerbated that particular disaster. Like, there's ways of modeling that in now. And you can, if you were interested, Peter, you could Google that and have a look. But I imagine he's not interested in doing anything except pushing the narrative that climate change isn't, or if it is real, it isn't really as big of a deal as everyone seems to be making it out to be.
Yeah. But the big thing was to do with statements that Peter Dutton made around Indonesia and Russian warplanes.
So this week, Peter Dutton wasted no time whatsoever, and I mean no time at all, not even enough to fact check the report that came out. There was a report that said there'd been allegations that the Russians had approached the Indonesians about putting a base on their territory. And Dutton said, see what's happening, Anthony Albanese's weak and he's shit at foreign policy, and I would be so much better because I'm a hard man. I'm a hard police detective. I'm all hard. I'm a hard big cop, and I'm really hard, just rock hard. I'm so hard.
Throbbing in some cases.
Big, hard, throbbing cop.
And he said, Anthony Albanese is weak and our foreign policy is trash. And then everyone went, whoa. That's unconfirmed reports. And the Australian government went through diplomatic channels and confirmed with the Indonesians that that is not the case. There is no Russian base going into their waters that would potentially threaten Australian sovereignty. And he refused to apologise up until the debate itself, where they said, hey, so multiple reports out saying that everything you said was completely wrong and you're being really opportunistic in going after the Albanese government for something they did not do or have not, or something that they are, for which they are not responsible. Let's put it that way. And do you apologise? And he goes, yeah, all right, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you would just go on national television and just savage one of Australia's allies based on unconfirmed reports, is just unreal.
Yeah. And that what's been taken away from this is everyone being like, well, no, see, it's good that they're willing to own up to their mistakes. And that shows a good leader. It's like, hey, it shows great to own up to your mistakes, but also when the mistake is, as Judge said, trashing your allies on the international stage about something that's unconfirmed, still doesn't make you qualified to be the Prime Minister, in my opinion. It's good to own up to your mistakes, but you still did a pretty big one.
And these are the allies that if you win government, you will be having to deal with in order to, provide a containment strategy for China and to some extent Russia. If you piss these people off during the election campaign, they're not going to help you when you're in government. So what the fuck are you doing, dummy?
I do wonder how much of it's because this is not the first time he's done this.
Being a cunt.
I wonder how much of it is, that he's talking on the run, he knows all the facts and he's deliberately pumping it up to make the issue sound hotter than it is.
I think, or is it to assume he knows all the facts,
Or is it just that someone's whispered in his ear, he's extrapolated in his own brain what that means, and then he's gone on the front foot with it without really properly looking at it?
That's absolutely what happened, I think. He's read half a headline and he's about to step on stage and do a speech, and he's used it as an opportunity to, to stick the boot in, half understanding what's fucking going on.
So the actual original source of this was this military website called Jane's, which is reasonably well sort of, it's not a fringe website.
But it said in the article that it's based on unconfirmed reports.
Unconfirmed reports. So what that might mean is that potentially, maybe someone on the back end of the Russian administration talked to someone on the back end of the Indonesian administration.
Maybe they did.
Right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that happens all the time in global. That's how
it's called back channeling. There's a word for it.
Yeah.
That's how the global society works, right? In terms of interchanges between different governments. So, I find it
it's
not unsurprising they've done this, because this is not the first time they've done it.
It's dumb. It's dumb and bad.
National security stuff. They did the same thing. I'm going to forget exactly what it was about. A couple of months ago, and it was around the Albanese response to, was it the Chinese warships or something else?
I remember.
There was another interchange. But anyway, the whole point is that there's a series of, and I've forgotten the exact instances, but you can look them up, of where the coalition has tried to sort of make a mountain out of a molehill on a national security issue.
And it's blown up in their face. Yeah.
And it's blown up in their face.
Yeah, just to score some points.
Yeah.
But that's what he does. He scores cheap political points, right? Like that's his go-to move. It's like, how do I turn this into a political football that I can use to bash Albanese?
That's being in opposition, I guess. Like,
but you also got to have your own policies and stuff as well.
Yes, that's what I mean. That's like being in opposition, doing that. But if you want to then not be in opposition, you kind of have to do not opposition stuff.
Yeah, if you want to govern, then you actually need to have your own fucking ideas as well. The thing is that this is one of the issues for which the Liberal Party is meant to be renowned for, is their muscular stance on foreign policy and being like having a better grasp on defense, right, than the Labor Party. And it kind of erodes your credibility to keep making mistakes and then saying, oh yeah, I got it wrong on specifically national security, which was my portfolio as the what was he, the Home Affairs Minister, and then he was in immigration. Like this is your area, your area of alleged expertise. And if you keep fucking up on this, people are going to start noticing that. Like even the Australian public will start noticing that.
I remember that one of my favorite ones was at the end of the Scott Morrison era on the election day, or was it like the day before something?
The boats are coming.
The boats. There was one boat that rocked up somewhere.
Yeah. That was election day. That was the day of. They were texting people.
Yeah, that was an SMS,
day.
Right? Yeah. And they were like, "This is what happens when Labor gets a sniff." I was like, "Are you fucking serious?"
Yeah, it's
don't put it past them.
Such a joke.
Yeah.
To make to grab a political opportunity.
Yeah. Peter, you can't, if you're going to be Prime Minister, you can't just keep like rushing in half copped.
Very good.
Who are Australians for prosperity, George, and why do I...
But before we go on, there was one other thing where they asked about the trustworthiness of Trump. And they asked during this debate, they asked each of the candidates whether whether they can trust Trump, given the fact that he's an insane dictator. And Anthony Albanese obviously is Prime Minister. He's got like foreign policy. They're obviously in the middle of like tariff negotiations and stuff as well. So obviously he can't say what he would really want to say, which is, of course not. The man's a lunatic. What he said was, "Oh, of course we can trust him. I have no reason not to." And David Spears was like, "Fucking okay, loser, whatever. Move on."
He's like, "I can give you 10 reasons, but okay."
That's fine. Anyway, they move on to Peter Dutton. And so, Peter Dutton, can you trust Trump? And this is right after a section where he was saying that Anthony Albanese is a loser. He got these bad tariff deals. Me and my administration, we would have gotten a much better tariff deal. It's like the same tariff deal where he taxed 10%. We got the same rate as the Penguins
on everyone
on McDonald Island that are completely unpopular. Yeah, we got the same rate as literally everyone, the 10%. You would have somehow negotiated a better deal. He's, we got Joe Hockey and bloody get over there and bloody sort it out. And bloody Liberal Party's got all the connections with the Trump administration. We would have sorted it, mate. Bloody negotiator. And then they say, okay, well, do you trust Donald Trump? And then he goes, haven't met him. It's
I don't know him.
I
don't
don't
know the man.
And then he tries to hospital hand pass Albo and goes, oh, Anthony knows him. He's met him. What a piece of shit. Oh, he's the worst. And he goes, I was like, hang on, weren't you a second ago saying that you had the superior relationship with the Trump administration? You could have gotten us a great deal. And now you're saying you don't fucking know him from Adam. Like, this is just so weird. He's such a weird fucking liar. I just cannot stand this guy. And so it's like, hang on. You've had 10 years of viewing this guy in the public eye, seen everything that he's done and said. You, a former cop of 8 years, can't tell whether you trust a convicted felon who's got 34 guilty counts against him. You can't say whether you would trust that guy or not. Like, that doesn't, you can't make an assessment. Former police officer Peter Dutton. You haven't got enough evidence yet, detective? Okay, buddy. What a fucking weirdo. Anyway, so that's enough of the debate. Dutton came off looking like a bit of a piece of shit. So that was happy. I was happy about that. So let's talk about Australians for Prosperity before we run completely out of time. So you might have been getting, like I have, a slew of advertisements from a group calling themselves Australians for Prosperity. A lot of things like, alert, your teal independent has expired and they need to be returned to the service centre for they're not representing the Australian people properly. And they're authorised by Joseph Valiski, Australians for Prosperity Canberra. And you might wonder, who are Australians for Prosperity? Is it a totally grassroots organisation filled with like-minded individuals who just happen to hate teal candidates and Labor? No, you might note that Jason Falinski is a former LNP member of Parliament, and he is one of the people that is the spokesperson for this operation. And you might be interested to know that they are funded almost entirely by the coal industry. What? Shocker! No, who saw that coming? Fucking no one. So the coal industry funded group has been campaigning against progressive candidates in the federal election, and they have been asked very politely by the Australian Electoral Commission to delete 2 months worth of social media posts after being pulled up by the AEC over unauthorised content. So we know that Australians for Prosperity has raked in $725,000 in donations from Coal Australia, and that, they were forced to deactivate those ads on Instagram and Facebook a couple of weeks ago. So some of the ads feature Vox Pop-style interviews with voters in seats held by teal independents and are edited in a way that was sort of disingenuous to make it look bad for those teal independents, right? And then the part that authorised by the the part that happens at the end of those advertisements was not occurring on these advertisements. So basically the AEC was saying that it's deceptive advertising because you're not declaring your interest as a political actor at the end of these commercials. You're making it look like native content, saying that these people in these electorates just natively hate the teals, which is a thing that you are not allowed to do in Australian electoral politics.
I wonder, that's interesting because the people that are organising this are well-versed political operators.
Falinski is a politician. He would absolutely know that's
Falinski
not on.
Would know. And then crucially, the guy that's actually running it was like a campaign manager as well.
So they know what they're doing.
So they know what they're doing. So I
initially I was thinking, Adam, it's just
weird. That's a weird,
totally natural grassroots campaign.
My point is, I thought it's a bit weird that they'd make that mistake to not put the authorised.
Oh, Adam, sweet summer, Adam. I love that you think it's a mistake and not completely on purpose.
It's so weird they did it. Yeah, but obviously it is on purpose because the thing is we're putting those ads, those declarations at the end, so that everyone goes, oh, okay, it's
an ad. Yeah.
Whereas if it doesn't have that, it has a much more
native advertising. It's just
corrosive.
Content. It's just content. Okay, it's just all these people and there were people in those Vox Pops that said, "Oh, I consented to be in a Vox Pop, but I didn't know it was going to be used for a political ad." And they've taken out all the context of what I've said, and they've just highlighted one shitty part, which isn't really reflective of how I feel about the candidates. Right? They've got a pull quote that sounds bad for the teal independent or the progressive, and then left the rest. Right, so they've deceptively advertised it, deceptively edited it as well, in order to project an idea that is not actually being advocated by the people that are being interviewed. Right, it's deceptive on a number of fronts.
They spent 136,000 on Facebook and Instagram ads since it was set up in July last year. They've only been ordered to remove, up to I think it's about 2 months worth of content. The other day, I mean that's okay. Yeah, the AEC's onto it, and they're making authorizations for this group as well as others. That's fine. But like by that point, the damage is already done. You would think, right? Yeah. Should there be fines, like financial fines?
Yes.
That go along with this is my question.
And they should take place immediately. You should have injunctions, and the AEC should be able to say, you can no longer post content under this banner for this organization. You need to disband. Basically, you broke the rules. You fucked up. Like, not just pull the content down, because as you say, they've been spewing shit for the last 2 months.
The damage is already done.
Damage is done to the electorate, right? You can't wind that back. And it's exactly the same model of approach that Elon Musk was doing in the lead up to the 2024 election as well. Oh, I'm gonna pay people to sign this petition. I'm not going to pay them to vote, but I'm going to pay them to do all these other things which are adjacent to voting for right-wing candidates, right? And then whoopsie daisy, it's too late. We've got Trump. Like it's already too like the damage has been, even if it's found after the fact to be illegal, or you get a fine or you're told to pull it down. Well, it's like, who cares? No one's scrolling through old content from 2 months ago. Like when people see it is the day that it's posted. Everyone's already seen it. The message is already in their heads. It's too late.
It's why the only kind of way to impose like sanctions or punishments on these kinds of things is to make whatever the after the fact punishment is so severe
as to discourage it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's one of those cases where deterrence is really the only measure of it, because anything you do after the fact is too late.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that the people that are sort of behind this or that are running it. So the actual Australians for Prosperity is registered in the name of public relations consultant Will Dempsey, who's the former media advisor to then Liberal MP Jason Falinski, who we've talked about, and he's the spokesperson for this organisation. Now, he lost his seat in Sydney's Northern Beaches to an independent.
To a teal.
In 2022.
Yes, exactly. Someone's a bit salty.
The group's executive director is former Liberal National Party MP Julian Simmons, who held the seat of Ryan until losing it in 2022 to Greens Elizabeth Watson-Brown. So they're obviously trying to target specific teal. I don't know. Is your
progressive?
You've been getting text messages, George? Or
no, I've been getting a lot of podcast advertisements. So like pre and mid reel podcast ads where the podcaster isn't necessarily aware of what goes in. They go, here's a spot for an ad, and then like a local ad agency can run an ad and fill
Spotify
it. Spotify
or whatever decides.
Whoever decides what goes in there. And it's generally like local content. It's like, come on down to Bill's fucking Earth Movers. If you want an Earth mover that moves Earth real good, come on down to Bill's. And I was like, this is completely irrelevant for me. I don't know why I'm getting this ad, but that's fine.
I just bought an Earth mover.
Yeah,
you don't need to advertise me another one.
My Earth mover budget is done for this quarter. Like, get me next quarter, you idiots. So a lot of the pre-rolled ads, I'm getting are for these ads. So if you're listening to like The Rest is Politics, or I'm seeing them on like Rachel Maddow podcasts, or Daily Show, the ones with John Stewart, things like that. And they're sort of targeted. People are into politics and interested in politics. That's really all the targeting, and in Australia, presumably. And they're just targeting, teal and return. And it was like some kind of like ad with lots of like sirens and like, I heard something about like factory recall. Your teal has been factory. I was like, what factory recall? Like as a parent, you're just kind of like, what is it now? And it's like, no, it's your teal independent that's been factory recalled for not delivering like all this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
like,
your teal independent might be killing your son.
Yeah. So, and that's clearly the attention grabber that they wanted, the hook that they're wanting to go for there. So, but I'm just hearing them constantly now. And so clearly they've put some money behind it.
Whether or not they're geolocated though, to specifically your
to Australia. No, it'd just be Australia. I don't think they could locate you that well because I live in a swing district that's like leans conservative, right?
Yeah.
So I like clearly that's not very targeted with podcast ads, but I mean nonetheless I'm hearing a lot of them, right? So it suggests, and yes, they've got the authorized by Jason Falinski. They've got all that stuff on there now, but it is interesting that it's not really dissuading them from their like there is a fake grassroots strategy that is being pushed, and clearly they've got money behind them, and they're happy to keep pushing it, right?
They were doing the same thing in the Voice, right? And I mean, yes, there are ones
Advance
on
Australia
the left.
and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
There are political action groups on the left, yes.
Yeah,
but I would argue
Get Up
most
is
of those
very transparent. Everyone knows who Get Up is
Correct.
and what they're trying to do, right? So no one's surprised. You know, no one's like,
the Teals,
this is by Get Up. I had no idea. Like,
what's interesting though is the Teals are also fighting back as well. So I'm getting ads for Teals. Basically, you know, Monique Ryan, for whatever reason, she's in my algorithm,
smashing it,
and she's just like I'm just seeing I'm seeing like several Monique Ryan ads every day.
Yeah.
I'm not even in her electorate, but there are also other.
So the money's not being well spent then.
Yeah,
if those ads are going to you, you can't even support her if you wanted to.
I'm close though. I'm only.
That's
like,
why. You're in the zone. That's why.
Funny.
I'm in the zone. I'm in the catchment, as it were. But like Climate 200 have been hitting very hard on the left.
I've been seeing that a lot.
For Teals. So yeah, I would argue the ones on the left are less. Not that they're not. There's not some element of astroturfing, but they are less astroturfed than the ones on the right. And we've seen that from the Voice.
I don't have a problem with groups and organisations that are devoted to the activity of advancing particular candidates, as long as they are transparent about what it is Climate 200, they say we are promoting pro-climate candidates, and they'll say that in their ads.
Pretty obvious.
And this is the thing that the candidate in this seat is advocating, and it's not pro-climate. So if you're pro-climate, don't vote for this guy. Like, it's pretty, you know, it's very transparent in terms of what they're trying to put together.
Yeah.
And there's I saw one where he's doing like a detective thing, and like there was like, there's like, it's cute content, right, about the utter destruction of our native habitat, but like, you know, it's transparent as to who they are and what they want and what they're trying to advocate. If you like pro-climate stuff, don't vote for this guy. It's almost just informational. It's not even necessarily persuasive. It's like, hey, this is this guy's voting record on climate. If climate is an issue for you, then you should know that, right, going into this election. Whereas there's a difference between that and like the kind of dirty tricks, you know, fake, we call it astroturfing, which is a term for fake grassroots campaign.
A fake grassroots movement.
You see that a lot more on the right for whatever reason, where it's like, oh, this is just it's a piece of content. And you go, oh, actually, no, it's a political ad. You know, it's like only if you're paying attention will you sort of, and the reason they do that is because those kinds of communications penetrate further than those that are expressly political communications. The reason they do it is because it works. You know, that's why native advertising is the thing. We don't want you to know that we're promoting Emirates Airlines. We just want you to have a really good vibe from Emirates based on this totally real article that we placed in this magazine, right?
Yeah.
As a reason it's banned in a lot of places that, you know, on Instagram, you see the little hashtag that says ad when a girl talks about Sephora and her new face cream or whatever bullshit, is because, you know, there are standards around what you can advertise, and it has to be explicit that you're advertising something, because, you know, native advertising and sneaking content like that into people's brains is not okay, and there are laws against it oftentimes, right? So it is, I don't know, you're seeing it a lot on the right, and it's sneaky. I'm just glad that it doesn't seem to have the kind of cut through that it does in the United States, at least, all these far right wing fringe groups, Advance Australia and all that sort of stuff. So at least yet. For now, we're not going to talk about the last story because it's depressing. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you listen to us at our Salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flippin' TikTok and Threads and Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky. Make sure you follow Tom at...
I don't know if you heard the episode with just Adam and I. I uninstalled Twitter off my phone, so I mean,
what about Instagram? You're still on Instagram?
Yeah, I don't post on it often, and it's not public, so I might just not know who you are if you try to follow me, and I'll just be like, don't know you, and ignore it. But right, Tom D. Heath, if you want.
Yeah.
But
Adam.
You can follow me down to the One Nation election results Wikipedia page, which I've dug up a little bit further. So in 2022, it's interesting. So the biggest, so for One Nation,
it's really stuck on this, aren't you?
Dropping stats at the end of the show.
They're all gone, Adam. Everyone's gone.
No, we'll come back. 2016, the double D election, double dissolution. They had 4 seats.
I'm not talking about the seats, though. I'm
all
talking
seats
about
overall.
the primary vote. Like, what percentage of the population is voting for them?
So, I'm getting there. And then in the subsequent 2 elections, they've only had 2 seats overall, according to this. But interestingly, so in the lower house, in 2022, their primary vote in the lower house went up, or just the percentage of votes, sorry, not the primary vote, the percentage of votes went up by 4.96%. However, in the Senate, they lost about the same, 4.29%. So 2019, they both went up, but it's sort of...
I guess what I'm talking about is rather than in reference to a particular election cycle, what I was referencing there is that the far right, as a movement over the last 20 years, has grown substantially, right?
Since 2016, their vote share has gone up overall.
So what I need is an apology, and you saying that I was correct.
Well, I agreed with the state level, but federally, I mean, they did lose votes in the Senate.
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week. It's fucking pedant.